Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I thought that I would share with you one of my poems today. It is not Poetry Thursday. This will not be going up on Poetry Thursday. This is one of my poems before I really knew what I was doing. I am going to guess that it was written when I was in my late 20s. 29 is what I would guess. It is a poem which has no title. And the fact of it being September 1st today is what prompted me to be thinking about this poem. When one is learning to write, the early endeavors, the early efforts tend to hold more staying power in one's reminiscence as one gets older. After a certain point, everything that I wrote is just a blank slate. I have no idea about any of it. But these early poems, generally there's some kind of a story attached with them. So this, as I say, it's an untitled poem. Now it is September when it was June. Look at us, these strangers, you, I, all drawn to the beach to see the moon on this mid-autumn festival. Already the breeze has changed, sowing a new astringency, the waves sloshing before us, half deranged, living in the city like slaves. How will we know the signs that foretell love's evanescence, evident no less than the turn we all feel, the dead leaf found in our tenement? So, I've talked about this poem in other contexts in which I point out that it was not a dead leaf that was found in the tenement. It was a dead fly. At the end of summer, you often find flies appearing in the windows. But for the sake of the poem, I changed the image. It was also not technically a tenement. It was a slum building in a very good neighborhood. That was where I lived. But that's not what I want to talk about. When I was young, I was raised in suburbia. I had nothing to do with the world. And sometime also around this period, when I was 29 or so, I got my first dog. I'm not really traditionally a dog person. We did not have animals in the house growing up. It is a great lack not to have had them, and of course I always wanted them. And so in my late 20s, when a puppy fell into my hands, I kept it. And the remarkable change that came about with that was I started to notice the weather. I had never noticed weather, but being forced to go out every day, multiple times per day, I became aware of the weather. And in this growing awareness, I would say, I think 12, 13 years ago when we began to garden, that was another step in my becoming more aware of how nature operates. I'm not a person really in tune with nature. I think that is why I am not a person particularly in tune with dogs, as some people are who perhaps grew up around them. So now it is September when it was June. Look at us, these strangers, you, I, all drawn to the beach to see the moon. And then the leaf. And I was really afraid for a long time that I had put a leaf which fell from the tree into my apartment in September, because everybody knows that October in Chicago is the month when the leaves begin to fall. And so for a number of years, a couple of years, I tried to pay attention, and I realized, phew, there are some leaves that do come down in September. So I dodged a bullet with that one. You never know when you're going to write something that is just so idiotic. It happens all the time. And I felt, well, at least on this occasion, I escaped that. I'm getting bitten here. Well, with the acceleration of climate change, as it is known, or global warming, I think, as it was called, or it possibly is still called. I get confused about these terminologies. Well, we've had this last week in August has seen a plethora of leaves all over the place coming down. So the temperatures are hotter. This year has been hotter than any year on record, as all future years to be expected will be, or are posited to be. It is hard to see what would change that. But so even though it is hotter, it seems that our autumn, our fall is beginning earlier, and yet the winter that we had last year was hardly what we used to think of as a winter. We had about 1 week's worth in, it might have been February or March, when, I hope you don't have to see a butthole here. He's got a really nasty one sometimes. So, even though it's warmer throughout the whole year, autumn seems to be coming earlier, but then what we get as a winter is not like what we would have considered a winter in years past. We had, as I said, 1 week's worth of snow on the ground last year, and it may well be that we see none of that this year. So I don't know why I am thinking about this particularly. It just dovetails into other thoughts I have had. I think I wrote something to the effect, for some reason, I am becoming a mecca to all the cats this morning. I don't know why. They're peeking around the corners, and of course they won't all make an appearance on camera. But while I was out with my dog this morning, I was thinking the lines of Emily Dickinson, which do sometimes come into my head, and I'll try to, I haven't looked at it, but it's, to make a prairie, it takes one bee, and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. And I think there's a little book I put out called Politics and Poetics or something, and I had a piece in there just at the time when it was first dawning on me that climate change, global warming were real, to the effect that I'm afraid he's going to lean into the iPad, which is propped here, and knock it over, so I'm trying to hold him back. This poetry that we write, now we really don't have that much in the way of prairies. You do get to see a small prairie here or there if you go out looking for them, and it's very nice. And there have been efforts made to regenerate some prairies, but with say suburban sprawl and other industrial usages, land for prairie has become very rare in Illinois. Farming, of course, monoculture takes up a huge amount, not to mention the quote-unquote farming that is done with raising and killing animals. But our poetry is dependent upon some kind of stable ecology. So, I mean, we live in an America in which reverie does not exist. Prairies scarcely exist. And if bees cease to exist, then we will cease to exist. And so I just think about these things. Of course, everybody who is a writer hopes that their work will last. But the threat now to anybody's writing, particularly any poet's writing, is more just the global threat in itself. It's not some accident of a manuscript burning up in a house fire or something like that, or being left by mistake in the car and disappearing out of the back seat, that kind of thing. The threat to poetry is what is happening in the world. So I will leave off that talk here. This is from Embodiment and Release, my first book of poems, my oldest book, my oldest extant writing, I think, unless there's some manuscript stuff here or there that survives. I have not taken an inventory. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel, and if you've gotten this far, thank you for indulging my talking about poetry, my poetry, on a day which is not Thursday.